Go afton.
Hi.
Okay, I'm here with nukeduck, obviously from Lemondogs. To start this interview out, with a lot of the players, when I do the research and I look into their histories, either a player has been in like a really famous teams, or if they were in like just the teams below, then they usually in Europe, that means a lot of the competition they played was online, because in 2012 there was like all these online cups every month, every few weeks, and all the teams competed. So as a result, all the pros kind of know each other. But when I looked into your career, you were in like a couple of teams in 2012, but you don't really have like many results compared to a lot of the players in LCS now. Is it really the case that you were like always trying to be competitive throughout all of 2012? Before that, were you always trying to be a pro player?
Yeah, I was always trying to improve, and I was just playing with teams that weren't as good, and I wasn't that good either. But as I played in the teams, I just improved and improved, but I tried very hard to be a pro player. Or I tried harder and harder as time went on.
One of the interesting things I did find when I looked into your older teams was you played in this team 3D Max, where actually you played with Kubon, who's now in MYM,
yeah.
And I'm not sure, how do you say the name of the player who's like the stand-in AD for fnatic? Puszu. Okay, so you played with these two players, and I mean, it's unusual.
And who? Midroid, the guy that works for Riot now.
Ah, okay. So anyway, I thought as a result, since you don't play with them anymore, you could give me kind of like an insight into them. Like, are they the same types of players they are now? Do they do the same types of things, or were they different back when you played with them?
I only played, Kubon wasn't in the team for long because he got an offer from Mithy Makers like a couple of days after he joined. So he left to join Mithy Makers. And about puszu, I think he is pretty much the same kind of player now. He's a very, very aggressive laner, and that is like his strength. That was also the time back then.
Did it surprise you that he suddenly sort of came out of nowhere to be the stand-in for fnatic now?
Well, he was gone for quite some time, but then he started playing again, and he got like very high ranking. So when fnatic was looking for AD, they took him. Like, I wasn't surprised because he got really high ranking in really low time, so people must have recognized him.
How do you evaluate how he did in fnatic this season?
He did pretty much as good as Yellowstar, I think, but I think Reckless will do better than both of them. So okay, I would say. So
actually, you mentioned there that puszu had actually had like high elo. One of the interesting things about the European scene is that in America, okay, a lot of the people who were at the top of the elo rankings were actually the pros anyway, and they were all like in top teams. But if you looked in Europe throughout 2012, a lot of the people who were towards the top were people like Erlend, etc., who weren't considered like top professional players, but they were just known for being elo stars, okay? Yeah. And so at the time, people made out as though the elo didn't really mean much in Europe, but I've noticed for this season of LCS, a lot of the newer players who've had success and have shown themselves to be really good this season of LCS were the people who were really high on the elo charts anyway. How accurate do you think like people's rankings are in terms of how good they actually are skill-wise? Like, how much does it translate to the pro game?
I think it's very low amount. I think the reason that people get picked up to teams because they're high elo is because they get recognized. So even if a guy is very high rated, the team will obviously like play with him and check if he's good. But if you have high ranking, there's like higher chance of getting a tryout, I think. And usually they are good with high ranking, but it's not that accurate.
People used to actually always list the famous examples for Erlend because he always kept having like the top elo in Europe, and yet he could never get into like one of the big teams. Is there a player out there at the moment who has really high elo, but he isn't very well known by the public, or he isn't getting a chance in big teams? Is there anyone like that at the moment in Europe, do you think?
Well, not really. Well, the rank 1 player right now is Håkon. He's playing AP. And
the Danish guy, isn't he?
Yeah, the Danish guy, yeah. He's pretty known by the community, I think. He was streaming and such, but yeah, he haven't gotten a chance to prove himself in a pro team yet, so I guess that would be the guy.
In terms of your team, when you look at all the teams in LCS this season, people could have actually made a case that your team should be the one with the least chance to win LCS season, because even the other teams who are like new teams getting in, so for example, okay, Alternate, they have like some people that were already known to be very good, like Creaton, they had like proven players. Even someone like MYM, who haven't necessarily done much, but they've had the same lineup for so long and they've been in a lot of actual tournaments. What was the factor that actually allowed your team to somehow finish top of the league? What did you overcome?
I think that around week 3 we started practicing a lot. Before that we couldn't really practice that much with all the traveling and stuff, and we had a relatively new lineup going into the LCS with our new jungler Dexter, so we didn't have much time to practice with him. And around week 3 we also got a new support, and when we started like finally settling down with that lineup and practicing with that lineup, everything just started to go very well for us.
Are you a team where you already had in mind the type of playing style that we've seen from you now in the season that's been like your most successful, or when you came into the beginning of the season was it like different from how you're playing now, or was it all kind of in place?
We just look at what other teams play and we figure out what is the strongest, like week by week. We don't really have a set playstyle. If we think a new playstyle is better in the new patch, then we will just practice that the whole week and go play it in LCS.
It feels like actually you could say that's kind of what a lot of the teams in Europe do, especially because we see so many different champions picked every week. We see teams doing totally different stuff, opponent to opponent to opponent, and as a result the rankings have been so close. Do you feel like this is the case, that people are just trying to kind of like anti-strat the other team each time?
Yeah, some things is like that. Like some teams are really predictable in their picks. We are pretty predictable, and
who do you think are the most predictable?
Alternate are really predictable in their picks. If you leave Ezreal open and Lee Sin and Orianna, they will pick all those 3 every time, and they will pick Shen 2 every time. So if you want to anti-strat against them, you can do that easily. And we are pretty predictable too. Like if Kennen was open, we pick Kennen. Jarvan is open, we pick Jarvan, and stuff like that. And let me think. EG are also very, very predictable. Pick Kassadin if open, and Malphite. And I can't really think of any other team that's predictable. Yeah, or Nip is predictable too, actually.
Okay.
With their Jarvan, Zed, and yeah.
So in that case, if this is kind of like the environment of what Europe's like at the moment, and your team's finished top of the whole league, does that suggest that you were the best, your team overall was the best at like picking and banning, the best at strategizing how to play against each specific team? Do you feel this way?
I think we are really good at picking and banning, but we are not strategizing against specific teams. We just like, I think we are the team that figure out what champion are best on the patch fastest.
Okay.
Like, I feel many of the teams, especially now in week 9, both Alternate and Fnatic picks like, they picked only champions that were like very strong in 3.9, but they are really weak in 3.10.
So why do you think your team's the one that's so quick to do it? Are there specific players who just have a gift for this? What is it?
Everyone tries to figure out what's the best for their role. Everyone plays quite some solo queue, and usually like the new stuff is always tried out in solo queue from other players and yourself. And we also scrim different teams and pick it up fast. So, and if we lose, we always discuss why we lose and in scrims. So from that we also figure out a lot.
If you think of a lot of the best players in the world from any region, okay, it tends to be that they're really famous for like 1 or 2 champions. Like everyone knows, oh, he's the best on this one here, and this guy's the best on another one here. And so you know, like, worst comes to worst, that will be like their comfort pick. They're going to go to that champion and they know they can be good on it. If your team's general approach has been like sort of changing what you do for each opponent, can this really work up to the very top level of the whole world? Is there a period in time where you'll have like a default style you're going to use against certain types of teams?
We just change the playstyle by patches. I don't know if it will work against the best that I'll be playing the same playstyle for months. Like, it's really hard to say because there is like no team in Europe that have been playing like the same and is at the very, very highest level. So we haven't really played against a team like that. So it's very hard to say. But I would say it might not work.
Are you someone who watches any of the other regions of League of Legends?
Yeah, I watch OGN and NA, and if there is big matches in China, I watch too.
Is there any team in any of the other regions who you think has a similar style to Lemondogs?
A Cloud9 I think have kind of the same playstyle because their solo laners get most of the farm and they do the split pushing and stuff. Yeah, I would say them, yeah. Not because of their skill, but because of their playstyle.
In some of the other regions, like I said, some of the players, some of the really good teams are even quite predictable as to who they're going to pick. Do you think EU is the region that tries the most stuff out?
Yeah, well, a bit lesser or the bit worse teams in Korea try a lot of stuff too to try to beat the good teams. But I would say, yeah, here in EU we tried a lot of stuff. It's like the only region where like Fizz is being picked a lot, for example, and Yeah, I think it's the region where people try it most, like Wukong mid from MIM and stuff.
When you're playing the mid position, if you're in Europe, that means almost every game you play against another like superstar player or a really big name in League of Legends, because Europe is just so famous for its mid players. And so usually people are going to think, if you're like a new player coming into LCS, or you're like a new player going against the likes of like, you know, Froggen and Alex Ich, all these guys, that it's going to be really difficult, it's going to be very intimidating. Were you always able to like battle that when you played them? Were you ever intimidated by any of these names?
No, not really. I don't.
Why not?
I don't think they are that much better than others.
Okay.
And I don't really think that EU has like the best mids anymore, even. But we will see at Worlds. But
what comes to mind? Well, when you say that, that's going to make people think two things. Okay. So who are the best mids in Europe, and then who is it from other regions of the world that's making you think Europe isn't necessarily like the best overall?
Who are the best in Europe? I think xPeke is very good, and I think Bjergsen is very good too. I think those two are like the best.
And who from around the world otherwise is making you think they're better? You know?
Well, I don't think they're better in NA, but I think like the overall play, the team play that they have in Korea and strategies are like, they execute them very well. So if like Europe were to play a strategy where the mid laner would like not go 1v1 mid, they would like react worse to it than Korean mids would do. So even if EU mids are like better 1v1 maybe, if they get put in like weird positions, I don't think they will react as good as Korean mids.
So when you listed there, like the two you picked out of Europe was Bjergsen and xPeke. Well, the immediate ones that are missing from the list that all the fans are going to be like, what happened to Froggen? What happened to Alex Ich? Do you feel as though they're not as effective anymore? Why aren't they like on the list?
I think they are very good, but I just think Bjergsen and xPeke sticks out a bit from them.
Is there something that they do that makes them above? Is there something that they're lacking the other ones?
I think xPeke is just very good at like everything. He plays pretty much every champion in mid and always does very good with it, and also really good at every stage of the game. And Bjergsen pretty much wins his lane every game against every player, so that's like his strength, I think, his laning phase.
Well, if your team has won the regular season of LCS, okay, and you're saying like to you the best mid laners are xPeke, is Bjergsen, and you don't feel like intimidated when you play against the mids in Europe, then if I add all these things together, it kind of suggests that like when nukeduck plays against Froggen, when he plays against Alex Ich, he feels like I'm as good as these guys, or I'm better. What's the situation?
I think I'm equally good as the mid players in Europe. It's hard to say though, because we haven't played that many games against each other, but I really think I'm one of the best, yeah. But I don't think I'm the best.
When you play against the European mids, is there any kind of specific style you always have in each types of games? Are you trying to like 1v1 them? Are you trying to like just go even? Like, what's the mindset when you play them?
In mid, in Europe, everyone that's playing mid are just playing like super selfish. They try to get as much farm as possible and experience, and not really helping out the other lanes. And then snowballing that into, for example, split pushing because you're stronger 1v1. That's basically the style everyone is playing right now, and that's the style I'm using too.
When you say you watch like, I mean, you said you watch some NA and you also watch OGN. Yeah. In OGN, do you feel like I've heard people say that as well, that Europe's a lot about like split pushing style, and obviously the most famous this is last season, Fnatic did that a lot. Yeah. How do you think this kind of style would match up against the best Korean teams? Because I think that some people think like they have the solution to that style, you know.
Yeah, I don't know. Like in Korea, they don't do this style. Usually, like even their AD support is split pushing a lot, and the mid is like not farming that much. It's just like regular as the other. Usually, the top laner is even farming more than the mid laner over there, and the AD too. And for me, I don't know if that strategy counters the mid lane split push strategy, but I would think that they would have a solution to it, yeah, because they watch EU, I assume, in Korea, so they must know about this strategy, and then they must realize that it's not as good or something.
Well, in that case, again, let me like add a couple of facts together here then. So if EU is a lot based around the mid, and the mids get to be very selfish and they get to kind of like farm up and get very powerful, and a lot of the star players play mid in Europe, but in Korea that's not necessarily like as much of the focus on the mid players. Does that mean then when you do see someone at mid who's like insane, like Faker or something, that he's really that much even better because he's not even getting like sort of put in a position that he should be totally on it? Is he really just better than everyone?
I would think so. He's like pretty much dominating every single game I watch him play. So I would say he's like the best mid in the world, I think. Even though I've never played against him, so it's hard to say. But from what I've seen, I think he's the best.
Well, I mean, you told me like you think you're comparable or you're one of the best mids in Europe. So if you're one of the best yourself in your region, and then you look at someone like Faker, what can Faker do that impresses even you? What does he do that you can't do, or that just you think that's unreal?
It's not like about like, I mean, like his GPM is like 500, and he pretty much destroys his lane every game, doing super well. It's just about how consistently he plays very good. It's not about like specific plays that is really good or something. Just about his consistency being so good every game. At
some positions, like AD carry is a good example actually. A really, really top class AD carry can usually get away with only playing a few, but if he's just amazing at all of them, you can't ban them all out anyway. He sort of gets to play the ones he wants to, and he'll just like practice getting good on like 2 or 3 really amazing. But at mid, we see, especially in Europe, people try a lot of different picks. So are you someone who tries to play like as many champions as possible at mid? Do you have like, say, 3 or 4 who are like the ones that you're always thinking about, like ideally I want to play these? What's your philosophy?
Yeah, I have like, before every week I have like 4 champions that I have in mind that I like want to use the next week. But then as the next LCS end and we start practicing again, I might like pick up a new champion. Like I, for example, did with Talon in week 6 or 8. 8, I think, yeah. Okay. So I just check out every, like, for next week, for example, we'll practice something new and stuff.
So when you're picking your champion, like the way you're describing it sounds like the team itself has something in mind with who they're picking, etc. Are you a team who always goes for like the actual overall comp in terms of who everyone picks? Do you like start out with a few champions, like, okay, I think they're going to have this, so we can counter pick them early, and then we put the other champions in? Or do you have like the whole picking structure in mind already?
We just have our first picks, and what we basically have, we have the picks that we want early, and then we have their expected picks, and from there we just try to make the comp.
Okay. So it sounds like in general your team's approach, right? Okay, if you think of it this way, a team can either play really like default style, and their idea is like, if we just play our default style perfectly, we win. Or a team can play like super strategical, like, oh, we're gonna do exactly this, and it's really complicated. Or there's a third option, which sounds like your team's doing, which is like a reactive style. And so you just see what the opponent's doing, and you like adapt your play to theirs. Is that kind of like more the style you're talking about?
Yeah, definitely. I think that is the style we're using.
Are there any other teams who you think, doesn't have to be in EU, but it can be, who are really good at this style, who you look at and you think that they're excellent at that style as well?
No, not really actually. I don't really like watch every game no gens. It's hard to say because I only watch like mostly the big games. So I don't really know about that one actually.
Do you feel as though this can be an advantage for your team then? Because if all these other teams from the other regions come and play your team, they're not going to know what to expect. Meanwhile, you're going to be trying to play off of their style. Do you think this can be like a surprise advantage for your team?
Yeah, it can be a surprise advantage, but we're not doing that much different every game, even though we play kind of reactive. Like we usually like go back to the same picks and play style usually, but it's just about what pick we do. Like we have, for example, like 3-4 junglers, and then we just see like what jungler we want that game versus that team. So it's not like it's going to be a big surprise. It's just going to be, they're going to expect it, but we're just going to try to pick the best, you know.
In terms of the actual, when a game's going on, okay, do you have only 1 or 2 people who get to make the final decision on when you do something, and if you like attack now or if you pull back or something? Is everyone getting an equal share? How does it work in your team?
Everyone talks, and we just like kind of agree on what we want to do in the game. All of us, I mean. But usually it's Mithy that makes like the quick calls, or like the standard calls, like when to do what, and then everyone else is like doing other calls that are more like in depth about their lane or something.
Is there never a case then that, because for example, okay, like this is another area where there's like different approaches. So some teams do it like you're saying, like sort of a democratic method. Everyone gets to have their say, and then you sort of decide as a group. Or there's like the method that a lot of people think of like Asians, where maybe one person says everything and he decides like, okay, we do this now, and everyone just obeys him no matter what. And the kind of weaknesses and benefits of these two styles is if you have the one guy and he is really, really good, then you can make like decisions quickly, and it's like always like everyone's thinking the same way, okay. But the problem with the democratic method, people often say, is that if if anyone in your team's a bit off, then either you might be indecisive and might not like pounce on an attack early, or you might just the right idea might not get picked between all of you. It might be 3 different ideas, you know. Do you ever suffer from this problem?
Yeah, we suffer from it sometimes, because that's just how it works. When everyone has to have their saying, things might go a bit slower, or we might pick the wrong decision. But when we do pick the wrong decision, we like learn from it and stuff. So yeah, I think we suffer from it, but not a lot.
Do you feel like, if we look at LCS at the moment, like for anyone who's watching now, the actual final week hasn't finished, so we're not exactly sure who's going to be where in the playoffs. We just know that your team's won and MYM's out at the moment. Yeah. The interesting thing about this season was, in the last season, it kind of made, the rankings kind of made sense, okay? So you had like Fnatic and Gambit on top, they were the best teams, and then you had like SKEG just below, and then you had like Wolves and then just below that, and then you had the 2 bad teams who were going to get knocked out. So it seemed like there was like tiers in Europe of like how good teams were. This season, it really seems like it was almost impossible to predict where everyone's going to go. So it seems like even old, established, legendary names are at the same level as like brand new names that people don't even really know. Is there something about the game itself, or changes, or Season 3? Do you think that's even the playing field like that?
Maybe like Season 3 opened for like more possibilities and more champion picks and stuff, so I guess it's better like in Season 2, like for example Froggen was like a god like Anivia and Cardus, and there was no point trying to play Anivia or Cardus as good as him. But now like new players can come in with their new champion because everything is viable, kind of, so it's easier for new people to come in, I think. So I think it gives an advantage, yeah.
Some of the mids who are the best in Europe, like if we think of often people named xPeke last season, they said like he was the best European mid, and he's famous for like roaming style, and as a result his team kind of play off that. When you're actually in game, how much of your play dictates like the rest of the team, or are you someone who you're playing based on what they're doing in reverse? Like which way is it for you?
We kind of play like they react to me a lot, I think. But that's like every European team almost have the same. So yeah, they react to me a lot, yeah.
So then when it comes to actually your pick in game, do you always have to try and get it so that you've got like the advantageous lane matchup? Is that what you're always going for your part? Or will you ever take, if the overall comp you think is better than theirs, will you take matchups that are unfavorable just in your lane?
I just pick like, I pick a champion that is like good outside lane usually. I like to pick a champion that like works later into the game, and then because then you have way more room for mistakes. Like if you pick a champion that is like you have to win your lane, and then you get ganked and die, then you just lose the game. So usually I try to pick a champion depending on both comps and see what like will do best later into the game.
One of the strange things was, oh by the way, you won that game over MYM there? Yeah, okay, so the strange thing was, until this last game of the whole season, which actually didn't matter for the rankings, your team had actually only one team that you had a losing record against, and it was MYM. And so basically, everyone else in the league, it seemed like this was the storyline. Okay, in the first few weeks, some teams didn't really know what to expect from MYM, and so they had some good results. But then after that, everyone sort of figured out, like, oh, if we just get past like the 15-minute laning phase part, like we probably win then. And so why was your team one of the few ones that like had difficulties against MYM? What was difficult for you to play them?
Well, at that time we played one time in week 1 and one time in week 3, and both that time we played with the old lineup, and we didn't really have a lot of practice. So it's not like we didn't have a lot of time to adapt to them, but we were just like as bad, or not as bad, but we were like on their skill level at that time, I think, and they just end up winning, or they might even have been better than us at that time.
When you made this move, okay, if we look backwards in time now from this moment when you've won the whole league, it looks like, oh well, obviously that was like a genius move, like you knew exactly what you were doing. When you removed that player and you brought in this new player, was it really the case that you just knew this was going to be like a great change? What did you expect him to bring in that would be different from the player you took out?
We expected Mithy to be better because I knew him already for some time online, and I met him at DreamHack 2, and I watched his team play, and he has like very, very great mechanics from being a support. I think he has the best mechanics of any support in EU, and he's also, that was what I expected him to bring, but also he came with a great leadership too. So he was basically just a perfect player to get into our team with good leadership and very good mechanics.
if you think of Tabzz in the AD position, what does mithy bring to like the bot lane? What did Tabzz need around him to make him more successful?
Yeah, also mithy, also what we asked mithy to do when he joined the team was to like learn Tabzz more about bot lane, because earlier we would like lose most of our bot lanes, but now as Tabzz have been learning from mithy, and mithy is really strict with Tabzz, so he learns fast. They have become a really good bot lane, I think. So that was the three things: learning Tabzz how to play bot lane good, and mechanics and leadership.
Obviously Tabzz used to play the mid lane, and you've played him before actually directly in mid lane in past teams. What did you used to think of him as a mid laner?
Well, I thought he was good, but he was always like, when I was playing mid against him, he used to always be in like the better team than my team, so we would like always lose to them. So it was hard for me to like even say how good he was, but he was definitely one of the top mids at that time.
Does the fact that he can switch to AD and your team can actually do the best in the whole league, do you think anything's changed about players being able to change to new positions? Because in the past, teams rarely did it, and it often was never as good, you know, like if a player was good in one position, he might be okay at the next position, but he wouldn't be like even better at that new one. What do you think's changed?
I don't think much changed. Tabzz and I'll be playing AD for like 3 months, and he was also playing AD a lot before that because he really enjoyed to play Vayne and Ezreal. So he was like playing them in solo queue just for fun. So he always had like, and he has good mechanics too. So it was, I don't think it was much different from like other roles up. It was just that it took a lot of time, and now he's like one of the best ADs.
Do you, when you're playing on solo queue, do you have a secondary role that you're good at as well?
Well, I played support before for Team Solo Mebdi, if you know that team.
Okay, yeah.
I was support, and I was going to go to the qualifier, but I wasn't old enough at that time. So I play support, and I play jungle sometimes too. And I sometimes play AD if I'm with mithy.
So if for some reason, let's just imaginary question for a second. If for some reason there was a team where you couldn't play mid, you were stuck in Tabz's position, okay, but someone's going to give you a spot at another position you can play in a pro team, which position could you actually play, do you think, and still be good at?
I think I could play pretty much every position.
Everyone?
Yeah, every position pretty much. I think top is like just like mid almost. You just play for yourself and you try to get strong and try to like not die. And I think I could play AD too. And yeah, I think if you like know a lot of, or if you are smart about the game, you can pretty much catch up to every role as long as you get some time to learn every matchup and the mechanics of the champions.
In general, if I interview players who are like, they're new to the top end of the scene, okay, a lot of them try to give like very safe answers. Like they'll say, oh, like that guy who, even though I just beat this old legendary player, you know, he's still a great player and I still admire him. I used to look up to him so much. It sounds like you're actually not impressed that much by all these great players. When you used to be, like you said before, when you were playing Tabzz and he always used to have the better team, when you used to play in these old teams and you were playing mid, did you always think to yourself, like, I think I'd beat that guy if I had a team as good as his, like about the other mid players, you know?
Nah, not really actually. I didn't think I was as good as them before, like, like maybe 1 month before the LCS qualifier, I thought I could like match up to them.
What changed?
I recently basically what happened was that I played mid and I played support, and then when the team got banned from LCS, I was like, okay, I can't play there anymore, so I have to find out something new to do. So at that point I started playing mid again, and I really like, what is it called? I got like a new spirit or something for playing mid. I just found it really fun again, like picking up the old champions again, and it actually helped me a lot. I think I got a lot better like that.
In some teams, we saw, like over the last, say, year or so of League of Legends, one of the changes was people started to do lane swaps, okay, so they could get specific champions or they could catch the enemy off guard a bit. But the problem with doing a lane swap is, usually you can only do it as like a one-off, because most of those players can't really play that lane. They're just going to do it with this one champion that they practiced for. But if you're saying that you can play, you think you could play all the positions in theory, you have Tabzz who used to play quite a good mid, then why doesn't your team try doing like more lane swaps, like swap mid to AD or something like that? Why is it never something that comes across your mind?
Well, there's like no point doing it unless like you have a really specific champion that someone wants to play, and we don't really have that. Like, if we would have that, maybe we would do it, but we don't. So.
Well, it's something else that's interesting about how you're describing it. It sounds like you guys actually, it's not even that much that you necessarily go off the opponent as much. You do that in some sense, but it sounds like actually you're going off the game the most. So you're trying to see specifically which champion will be the best in this position now. So is it really the case that if all the champions change, then we might just see like 100% different style from Lemondogs?
Yeah, definitely. If there come new champions that are really good, or some items that are really good for champions, we will like definitely pick them up.
So you're not like a player or one of these teams where if they have a champion really good at, but that champion's a bit weaker now, you're not going to go back to those like comfort picks or anything?
No, probably not.
You think that's a weak approach in general? It's not worth it, even if you are really amazing on a champion. If it's weaker, then it's better to try the OP champion?
Well, it depends. If you are so good with it and you are not that good with OP champion and you make your comfort champion work better, then it's obvious that you have to play that one. But if you can like get good at a new champion that is better, then that's always better, I think.
Is there a champion that you're so good at that you'd play in most circumstances?
Yeah, I think I would pick Zed a lot.
What do you think the secret to playing Zed is? Because I mean, most people when they think of Zed, think of like some of the amazing carry junglers who tried using him. What is he like as a mid player though?
I think you just have to like hit every Q in lane phase when you W, and like to dodge abilities and to utilize like the ult clone and the W clone like at the same time in like very clutch situation is what I think, like, and also calculating your damage perfectly too. So they have to do with that, because that damage is sometimes tricky to calculate with the ult.
When you were in LCS, there was an interesting thing when I did interviews with people in the last season. Some of the teams all played each other, but then people used to tell me that Gambit never scrimmed with anyone else in LCS in last season. Does Gambit ever scrim with you?
Yeah, they do actually scrim with us, yeah. Like every second week or something we scrim them a bit. Not a lot, but sometimes.
So in general, is it now the case that everyone basically just scrims people except the opponent they're about to play?
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay. Who is the most challenging team in scrims for you?
SK.
SK? Why?
We just started scrimming them recently, and they have been like, I don't know, they have just been playing very well versus us in scrims compared to the other teams. So we just decided to scrim only them for coming up to this week. Like we had like 2 days, because we had like 9 days of preparation or something. So for 2 days we scrimmed like different teams, also SK, and then we just like made the decision that SK are playing super good, so we just play only versus them leading up to Super Week.
One of the problems I noticed in the last season in the NA region was, because some of the teams actually streamed their scrims, was if you watched some of their scrims, the scrims almost had no actual resemblance to what would happen in the actual final game. Like there were stats of some of the teams beating other ones 9 out of 10 times, but then in the actual game, the one who'd won the 1 out of 10 would just own them. Yeah. How accurate in Europe do you think like the scrims are in general? Like the teams that always play seriously and they actually play how they do in the matches?
Yeah, most teams play serious during scrims, and if they play serious and we play serious too, the result is usually pretty accurate, yeah.
One of the big things over the last few months in the West has been the idea of teams bringing on analysts, people to like number crunch all the champions and stuff, and what this opponent does here, and to research every VOD and replay. Are you just a team who just does it among the players yourselves? Are you going to like use an analyst in this way in the future, do you think?
We have one actually.
Okay.
So he helps us with researching teams before we play them. So he gives us like suggestions what we should do and what they tend to do, and he also helps us like when new patches come to discuss and try out new stuff. So yeah.
Since it's a fairly new role, like how accurate do you think the analysis he gives you at the moment is? How close is it to what you end up choosing to do in matches? Is it just like every now and then you take something from there? Are you like every match taking something you can use?
Pretty much every match we take something we can use from there, from his analyst. He makes like a really like 3-4 pages analyst before like every LCS game.
Because I know not every European team has an analyst actually, like someone just going dedicated. Is this like something that's giving you an edge? Is it something that other teams can actually get close to just by watching VODs themselves?
It gives us a slight edge going into the game, but not a lot, but just a slight edge. So we know like what we should ban against that team and what they're gonna pick. So it gives us an advantage in picks and bans mostly, and level 1s.
Ignoring your own team, who is the trickiest team in LCS Europe at the pick and ban stage? Who's like the cleverest at getting what they want and tricking the other team?
I would say maybe Gambit. I think they're really smart coming to their pick and ban phase.
What are the difficulties when you try and pick and ban against Gambit?
Alex plays everything, and Diamond has like all these niche junglers that he makes work really well, and Darien also plays a lot of champions. So, and they always like make their comp work. Even if they pick weird champions, they make sure that they comp work together. So it's really hard to expect what to do, and even if they pull out something weird, it like always works pretty much.
Even amongst players who are all very good at one position, there's always certain stylistic matchups that are going to go really badly for one person and really good for another, even if they're both just as good, or even if the other one's better who's losing, you know. Is there a mid in Europe in this season of LCS who you feel like you just always do well against, like his style really matches up well for you?
No, not really actually. I think everyone in Europe pretty much plays the same style. It's usually about matchup and skill, I think.
Okay. From watching like NA or another region, is there someone you'd like to play against? Either you think like, oh, I think I'd probably own this guy, or this would be a really fun matchup to play? Mid guy?
I don't know. I think some of the NA mids like play very, very passive or not as good. So it would be fun to play there, I think, versus many of them.
Just any of them?
Yeah, pretty much. I think they do like, they play very different from us, I think. Well, obviously I think what they do are worse because we play in the other way. Maybe they think what we do are worse too.
How would you describe like the approach to using mid in NA then? Because people have often said like they don't have that many star players who are at the mid position. What do they do differently, do you think, as a team?
I think they like focus way harder on like pushing down the side lanes with their jungler, and the mid laner never really plays aggressive in NA as well. I think he always plays passive. So, and if you always play passive, you don't really improve as a player. So I think that's like one of the reasons.
When you watch other regions, do you try to just focus on your position, what the mid lane guy's doing? Do you just watch the game in general as just like a fan, as an observer? How do you kind of do it? Are you like very analytical?
Yeah, I watch every build and then see if like something is different from what is usually built on that champion, and then I try to like figure out why they're doing it, and then figure out whether I think it's good or not.
Are there any players from other regions who play mid who've impressed you in terms of like interesting or innovative builds that they come up with, or different things that you wouldn't think to try?
Nah, not really actually. Like all the builds are pretty much straightforward. Like the only build that I just took from another player was like my fist build from Tabzz. It was like the only build I took from another player.
Ah, okay. And did he help you out with that?
Yeah, it was like a long time ago when he started playing fist a lot, and I started playing him a lot too.
Since he used to be a main mid and he's played in good teams, does he actually, like, do you ever like work together mentally on like, if you're going to play a specific champion against the other one mid, does he ever say, I used to play that guy in when he played that champion? Do you like work together on the mid position?
Nah, not really actually. Not anymore at least. Or not, I mean, nah, no, actually not. Like we pretty much like have the same play style, and we pretty much know what both thinks.
One of the other things that was set your team apart at the beginning of the season was that a lot of the other organizations are very well-known names. Even some of the newer ones like Alternate, that's like a very old team in Germany. But your team, Lemondogs, actually, I used to work in Counter-Strike a lot, and Lemondogs was only really known as like a mixed team in Counter-Strike. They weren't like a big organization or anything. Is this something where you've got like a really long future set up with them already? Is it just for this season that you're going to play, and then is there like a renegotiation period or something? Like what's it like in terms of your deal?
I mean, we have obviously for this season and then for next season too, but we're gonna see. I don't know, like.
So you'll definitely be Lemondogs next LCS.
Almost definitely.
Oh, okay. All right, we can't really talk about the playoffs that much because we don't know who you'll play yet. So let me just put it this way. Since you've won this season of LCS, the regular season, then we know for sure you're in the next LCS season.
Yeah.
And coming into this season, that's always like a worry for any teams that have had like changes, because I think a lot of teams feel like if they had gone out of LCS, then they'd probably split up, or some player would try and join another team that gets into the next LCS. Do you feel as though there's any, like, is this, like, if we go like a year from now, will this be the exact same lineup of Lemondogs and it'll still be just as good? Do you think there's areas where like you need to really improve certain positions or whatever?
I think we'll be like the exact same team unless someone decides to like stop playing the game or wants to like study or something.
Are you a team where Right, a lot of fans, when they think of removing a player or thinking about getting a better player for that position, they get really upset if they like those players and they think, oh, why would you ever kick out your friend or something? But I always think of it like this. All the pro players in the scene are people who, the fact that they're pros means at some point in time, if they got a better offer, they went to another team, or if they could have got a better player, they bring them in. In the past, there were some pro teams, like I think of Fnatic sometimes in the years past, where they maybe hung on to a player for too long because they liked him from the early days, or they're hoping he turned his play around. Realistically, you think your team's one of the type where if things start to go wrong, you really will just like, it'll be like a business decision, we'll get a new guy in? Would you be like a Gambit style where you wait as long as possible to see if things will come back around? What do you think your philosophy would be?
No, if someone would obviously, like, if someone would underperform a lot, we would of course give him some time, but we would have to like make it like business, and we would have to like replace him if he's like holding the whole team back. We're not going to be like, oh, he's our friend, like, or something, but we will give him time obviously, but we won't do it like non-human. But
are you, aside from practicing the LCS teams in Europe, do you practice the amateur teams much?
As less as possible. Like,
as little as possible? Why?
Because they are not as good as the LCS teams.
Okay. Oh, well, that's going to be my next question, because last season, okay, one of the weird things is because so many surprise teams made it in, like Giants and Dragon Balls, who didn't do very well, it meant a lot of teams who people thought were good, like Millennium, Alternate, etc., who people expected to be in, didn't get into LCS. And so actually, even all the pros knew, well, these teams are pretty good, they're probably going to get in eventually. Is there an amateur team at the moment who you look at and you think, like, I think they'll get into the next season of LCS? Will it just be all the same teams again?
I think it will be all the same teams again, yeah.
There's no one who stands out?
No, not really. I mean, the two best teams in amateur scene are like Copenhagen Wolves and TCM, Swant and Riff, and I think the new team of Hawkton and Saf and White Knight will be pretty good too, but I don't think that anyone will get into LCS. I think everyone will stay from the current LCS.
Since this season was so close, do you think like the big name teams will, I mean, none of them can come first in the regular season, do you think you'll see like roster changes from them? Do you think they'll have adapted for next season, they'll all just stay the same? What's your impression from knowing the players playing them?
I don't think any of the big teams will make roster changes going into the next season, except for Fnatic that will take Reckless. So I think everyone will probably pretty much stay the same, yeah.
So for my final question, I'll do one of my hypotheticals.
Yeah.
So for you, the way I wanted to do it was, when the aliens come to Earth like they always do, this time they're going to say, okay, you're from Norway, Scandinavian region, but bizarrely, Norway's had very few actual good players in League of Legends. Yeah. So what they're going to do is they're going to make you the captain of the team to play the aliens to the fate of the Earth. But you, since they don't want to limit you to only Norwegians, because then everyone watching this interview will be like, who are those players? I've never heard of them. Yeah. They're going to let you pick anyone from all of Scandinavia. So you have to be the mid player, obviously, you know. But who are the 4 people going to be? And they can be for any country in Scandinavia. But you have to tell me who would be each, because, you know, I want to know. Okay,
so I would take Sorrow top, and I would take Maluno jungle, probably.
Okay, why Maluno?
I think he's a good jungler, so I would take him, definitely. Jerry support, and AD, I would take Mr. Alice, I think.
Okay.
And for what position are we left now?
That's it.
That was it, yeah. That was it, yeah.
Okay, so do you have any final words, someone you want to thank or say hello to?
Yeah, I want to thank Still Serious. Yeah, that's pretty much it for now.
Okay, that's it? No one to say hello to or anything?
Nah.
Okay, mange takk.
Ja, tack.